Last thing that I recorded and uploaded was a video on pirate software, and in that video, there was a kind of brief shout out of sorts to the channel Quinthio, who, as I noted I was familiar with at the time, has made a lot of videos about pirate software. So, it would make sense for the next thing we watch to be one of Quinthio's videos on pirate software, right? No, we're not doing that. We're kind of doing that. We're watching a Quinthio video, but we're not going to be watching one of the many videos that the channel has put out on pirate software because I have no idea where I would even begin on that front. However, that channel did recently put out a video on Nux Taku, also known as Nuxanor. And Nux is somebody that like I've actually been familiar with for a while. In fact, some years back when I like first found his channel, I actually kind of liked some of his videos. However, it became somewhat quickly apparent to me that he was not a creator that I really overall vibed with. Um, After getting through like watching a handful of his videos and like looking at other stuff on his channel and whatnot, I noticed that there were just like a number of things about him that I like didn't really like, and one of the like most noticeable things, I guess, and something that kind of was, I think maybe the most obvious thing that like made me realize that like made me feel like, you know what, I don't want to watch any more of these videos. Uh, was I noticed that he would do this thing where he would say something that would piss people off, and then not only would he not show any kind of like regret or remorse or anything of that sort for what he said, but rather he would go out of his way to make like fake apology videos where he would be like, "Oh, I said da 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 da, and it affected people in this kind of way, and I feel so bad about it." And he'd do that for like a couple minutes, and then he'd basically be like, "Psych, fuck you, I don't give a damn," and and then he would just like launch into like how much he doesn't care about what people think about what he's saying, and like he would and like doubling, and we're open this video talking about pirate software, double down basically, and oftentimes like in this like faked apology he would then not only not apologize but like make fun of the people he was apologizing to, and then say more things that he thought would intentionally just kind of like add fuel to the fire and piss them off even more. And it's just like it's very like, I mean, first of all, it's like it's very obviously like asshole behavior, right? But then also just like looking at it on a bit more of like a kind of like personal level, I guess. It just like looking at like the person who's like doing these things, like sure, from a content creator perspective, it's rage bait, so to speak. It gets clicks. People will click on and comment on things that piss them off. And so to that end, it's like it's good business, you could say. But it just feels very like bratty, I guess. And it's like it feels very like 2000s edgy, I guess you could say. Whereas he was doing this in like the late 2010s, like early 2020s. And so yeah, that was just like that was some of the like easiest to verbalize behavior that I witnessed from him that made me just like kind of tune out from wanting to continue supporting him as a content creator. But I have noticed over the years, despite not watching his content, I've noticed over the years that he has continued growing. And not only has he continued growing, but like he's made connections with a lot of other content creators, especially like, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, especially in like the VTuber space, because, he, in a sense, was kind of like a proto VTuber where he had his little like character model on the screen at times rather than going full no cam or just showing his face, god forbid. um and so I think he ended up finding his way into some VTuber circles, and I've seen him like doing collabs with people, and I've seen other people like talking about doing collabs with him. and I've seen people like speaking positively about him, and it's just always kind of rubbed me wrong because I feel like if he is, you know, some people just are kind of brash and abrasive, but for Nux, it was always the case, my personal take, it was always the kind of case where I felt like if this is how he's behaving outwardly, like in his videos for his internet, you know, content creator persona, I always had the feeling that like there was probably worse that the cameras weren't seeing. And he was, I'm not going to say, I'm not going to go so far as to say like he was probably like a terrible person, is slash was, whatever. But I would go so far as to say like he probably was a fairly, I think you could reasonably say he's probably a somewhat questionable person. Which brings us to this video now, and I'm going to put on the screen here real quick the thumbnail for this video. I know that this is like standard drama YouTuber fare in terms of like thumbnails and the way that like, you know, trying to like get people's attention, like clickbait titles and thumbnails and whatnot. He's done. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that I doubt that. Unless this is like, you know, Lucari level things, you know, unless it's something that's going to get you like straight up banned off of the platforms you're profiting off of, I find it unlikely that Nux is going to get canceled because like one, because I just think that cancel culture is kind of fake, especially in the way that most people try to talk about it. But two, because Nux in particular, again, like leaning on some of the stuff that I was just talking about, he has kind of like worked drama and controversy into like being part of his brand. He's not like, you know, he's not like someone like Asmongold who, you know, is regularly featured on LSF and like thrives off that kind of drama, and like being talked about like as a outright controversial figure in that way. But again, he is someone who like has sort of made his name on being someone that like he definitely doesn't shy away from being divisive. He if anything, he welcomes it. He enjoys it, right? He will facilitate it again by making things like those fake apology videos. So yeah, I don't expect that he's going to be again canceled over whatever this is, but whatever allegations these are, I am curious to see like just how bad they are, and I do wonder if they're going to be like severe enough to actually damage his reputation in any kind of like substantial, meaningful way. With that, I also will just say, since I brought up the thumbnail for this video in particular, I don't know what the intent is behind the way that this channel does their thumbnails, the Quinthio channel. I don't know what the intent is behind the way that they do most of their thumbnails, but I don't like them. They look very ugly. Like, if go to this channel and like look at the past, like, you know, aside from this one, which uses, you know, obviously an animated character, because we're talking about Nux, who uses an animated avatar for his online persona. But look at any of the like past dozen or so videos that this channel's put out about like people who do show their face, and the like the images of them that they put in the thumbnail. It's like, it's really off-putting. I don't like it at all. But anyways, enough about that. Let's go ahead and get into the actual video, shall we?
And even more importantly, this also
I hate previews.
This also had an age verification. You needed to click that you were 18
I've said this so many times. I hate previews in videos.
In the server.
Well, when an individual is in your server, self-admitting over and over and over again to the fact that they're underage over and over and over again, it's really hard to use the excuse of they clicked the button that said I'm 18 and up. This video is going to be a tough one, not only for the viewer, but for myself, because I'm going to have to be censoring things in a very particular way to make sure that this video doesn't just get deleted off of YouTube. I don't...
Oh. Maybe this will be as bad as the Lucari thing. Yeesh. I made the I could have made the Yeesh. I could have made the title for that Lucari video like a bit more clickbaity or a bit more like obvious what it was I was talking about, or like the situation I was addressing rather. But I made the title for that video something like, why are there so many people like this? And I didn't want to put like pedophile in the title or anything of that nature. But yeah, why are there so many people like this? Why are there so many people who are okay? Like, it seems like we're going in a direction where this is going to be another conversation about like sexualizing minors. I don't get it. Why? I call me crazy, but I've never looked at like a 12 to 14-year-old and been like, need to get me some of that. You know what I mean? Like, holy, I don't know. I'm making assumptions based on the preview bullshit. Let's just see if that's actually what this is about.
I'm just gonna jump into it. The person we're talking about today is Nux Taku. They are quite a large YouTuber. They have a 2 million sub channel as well as a separate secondary one, Nuxanor, with 930,000 subs, which they post more frequently too. Nux is now known for doing like political commentary stuff as well as drama commentary stuff himself, but he got a pretty big start.
Wasn't aware.
Being the hentai guy. Now, recently, just a few days ago, content creator Nicandros here ended up posting a video exposing Nux Taku's EPI Empire Part 1. Now, in this video, he makes some pretty heavy accusations towards Nux Taku. Number one, alongside Nux Taku's content creation being centered around hentai, including lolly, Nicandros alleged that Nux was very firmly aware that he had a audience that was very much 18 and under, or I should say 13 and up, that Nux went out of his way to give, information in regard to what he was covering, the hentai, things like that, their titles, how to find them, etc., which in turn was enabling access to this content for those children, but additionally that he catered his content to a younger audience on purpose. And finally, I would say most egregiously, Nicandros goes into Nux's Patreon Discord server, which you could enter for a single $1, and in there he finds a 14-year-old kid that was a part of that server that engaged in NSFW content and made it clear multiple times that they were a child to the other people in the server, so much so that the other people in the server engaged with that information. Nux also engaged with that individual so much so that it makes it really hard to argue an idea that Nux didn't know that this was a child on his server. Now, I'm kind of giving a shallow overview on purpose here. I highly recommend that you check out Nicandros' full video if you have the time. I'll leave a link in the description below. But because my video is coming out a bit later after the release of his, I also wanted to include how Nux responded to these allegations and accusations that Nick put forward. His response
I can't wait to see that.
And genuinely worrying. So with all that, I'm just going to walk
I can't wait to see that
Nicandros puts forward, like the ones I just mentioned, and show you guys the evidence that he provides. First things first, Nux did start originally as an anime channel, and then the hentai thing took off, blew up in terms of viewership, and he really ran with it. And I want to show how that kind of gets introduced here.
In 2015, he grew slowly and steadily, but in late 2019, everything changed.
I also made a video on YouTube that has since been removed, the biggest flexes in hentai, and the degeneracy began from there.
In the video, Nux Taku reviews and recommends 10 hentai animations, 7 of which were categorized as lolly, meaning they contained underage characters.
And this bad boy, very not chill stepfather, has a...
Okay, hold on real quick. This is like just information for information's sake. I like to make sure that people are informed about things. And I like to make sure that we are not like making assumptions about things that shouldn't be made. It's not like similar. So what am I talking about? Why did I pause here? What am I responding to? So in the Lucari video, right? I took time to mention how like just because a like piece of porn is labeled as like teen, that's not necessarily anything like underage or illegal, right? Because there's 18 and 19 is still technically teen, and also you can just straight up lie in titles, right? There's definitely, porn actresses who are like in their 20s, maybe even in their 30s, who are participating in teen videos. So like similarly here and now with the whole loli thing, I do just want to take a second to say again, it's similar to the Lucari thing. Probably wouldn't have become a big drama, controversy, scandal, whatever, if it weren't actually something inappropriate. But I do want to just say that while Loli does often refer to underage characters, it does not always refer to underage characters. That's just factually true. It does not always refer to underage characters. It sometimes refers to characters who like look underage, but also it's sometimes just used in ways that like don't necessarily make full sense. It's one of those terms that like, especially like as time has gone on, it kind of means less and less because people are using it like more broadly and generally and in ways that like don't necessarily make sense. Like like I have 100% seen people call clearly adult characters lolis just because they like have slimmer figures, like they have like a more modest chest and like a smaller ass, and basically they're not like, you know, One Piece characters that are just like absurdly proportioned. And so I just want to point that out, that like while loli does often refer to underage characters, it does not automatically refer to underage characters. I feel like that's just like, and some people might not think that that's like worth mentioning or talking about, but I do feel like when you're having conversations like this, it's important to recognize what words do and don't mean in order to avoid saying potentially problematic things with the way that you're using certain language. So yeah.
Very not chill relationship with stepdaughter.
Okay, those characters, however, do very much look like children.
This is weird, but hentai clearly knows better.
He was already showing adult content
Look at that. Like, just look at this guy wants to be seen as like a shit-eating gremlin. Like, look at that grin.
to a 13+ audience and giving them advice on how to find adult content online.
The reason why I bring it up here is because without putting text on the screen is nearly impossible to remember. Therefore, since the plot, and it's a goddamn plot, deep thematic and philosophical undertones here, I believe anyone who wanted to search this bad boy up without said title, because I was a douche for not putting it on screen, would just simply look up time stop hentai. Far easier than very understandable. A lot of y'all sent me screenshots on Twitter, link to my Twitter in the description, of the top recommended searches on the hub of prawn. And lo and behold, much to my surprise, WTF fanbase, one of the top hits is time stop hentai.
So not a great start. 7 out of 10 being that lollipop kind of stuff. For those who don't know, that, like Nick Andrews said, includes children in a sexually explicit manner. And additionally, I don't even think.
I like that he said it includes there, although maybe he doesn't mean it in the way that I interpret it. But again, not inherently. You get it. Point made.
Nick
I'll
Andrews
stop.
points this out, but it's very clear that Nux Taku is very much in touch with the fact that the content that he puts out and the information that he puts out surrounding this hentai content he's covering ends up getting dispersed by his audience. It's very clear. The whole point of that second clip is him talking about the fact that the type of content that he was talking about, this like time stop shit, was showing up as the top search result on this huge prawn site. I think that's important in establishing the fact that he was very much going out of his way to include this information for his viewers to go and seek out if they were interested in it. But additionally, the
To like have a way to be like, he's not giving them the straight up title, but he's still finding a way to like direct them to the things he's talking about. Also, maybe it is worth pointing, just so that I think I've probably done at least a decent job of making this clear, but like just to make it more so clear that I'm not trying to like defend certain things of like, not just like the specific behavior of Nux Taku, but also just like generally speaking, not making it seem like I'm not trying to like defend like any form of child pornography or hentai. I do want to say that like, even if we're assuming that like half of the loli hentai that Nux is talking about isn't actual children, and it's not like, and the characters aren't like made to be seen as though they are children, even if we're assuming that like it's a half and half split, 7 out of 10, half and half split, round down for, you know, kind of like, what is it called? Benefit of the doubt. That's still that's still like direct reference and discussion of 3 very inappropriate works of art, right? So still a pretty bad look, IMO. Oh, and that's just in one video. I'm pretty sure he made multiple videos like this, right?
The fact that his fan base was absolutely in droves searching up the content that he was sharing with them. In this series, just to start off, when he started going into this stuff, like he's showing,
I'm sure they were looking it up ironically though, right? Right?
here millions of views, over 5 million in total with all of them. Nux was also deleting the videos shortly after they were
I think I need to pause for a moment because my asshole neighbor drives an incredibly loud vehicle and I think it is picking up on my microphone. Despite the fact that I'm at the back of my apartment, not the front. I'm not like, it's not like right out, like I'm not only a few feet away from this person's car. Like, it's just that fucking loud. Okay, I think they've left.
releasing, or I should say privating them, unlisting them, and whatnot, to avoid YouTube, you know, going after them for
That's a lot of
community
views.
guideline issues. Almost like YouTube understands that, you know, when you have an age base of like 13 and up on your platform, that you could run a risk of having content like that being engaged with by that age range.
Because these videos were far more TOS risky than his usual content, Nux Taku would soon delete them after uploading to avoid moderation consequences.
I mean,
Plots and hentai too! Yes, this video will be deleted soon after uploading for the sake of my channel's survival, but a promise is a promise.
Furthermore,
yeah, like I said, I'm pretty sure there was multiple videos of this. But also, like, that's just realistically, that shouldn't be how YouTube's moderation works. I know that in practice, YouTube has, let's say, very inconsistent means of enforcement for their rules and TOS, but in theory, he shouldn't be able to do this. Just gonna throw that out there. In theory, he should not be able to skirt the rules by uploading it and then being like, oh, it's only gonna be up for a couple of days, and then either privating, unlisting, or deleting the video shortly afterwards, and then suffering no consequences because it's like it never existed.
or Nux Taku gets so popular off of this kind of series of covering hentai on YouTube that he starts collaborating with a bunch of huge YouTubers. People like Moist Critical, for instance, where they're covering stuff and doing like
what?
reviews of sorts of this
That's not the same as collabing. Let's be straightforward here.
Questionable age.
There is an asshole door, so it's a woman with her ass out, and this one's like an anal key. And Ash Ketchum is well, at least a young Ash Ketchum seems to be approaching it.
Oh no.
And he uses what's called the fist dash, it seems, to gain entry.
Oh wow. Is this made for you? Yeah, I think it's gone now. So now he's sprayed her with the spray of doom.
Oh no. She's quivering.
Oh my god! What? I didn't experience that!
Nux Taku also deployed a very
I don't know who that guy is, but like, I assume if we're including a clip of him in this video, he's some prominent dude I'm just not familiar with. Why? Why are... I get it. Reaction content's, you know, relatively easy pickings. Especially if you're not providing much insight into the videos. You know, I say this, you know, I say this as a reactor, right? But I think that so far, pretty much every video that I've made has been twice the length of the original content that I'm reacting to, right? And I get that not a lot of reactors do that. They just sort of, oh, what? Just, that's so crazy kind of things like that guy was just doing. But like, what makes you decide to choose to react to something like this? You know what I mean? You know, that's I guess that's where I was trying to go with that line of thought. That Okay,
aggressive
it's fine.
clickbait strategy.
It's not, but, you know.
Wasn't enough. He needed cropped hentai, bestiality, and lolly.
Now, over the course of my video here, I might be
Hentai, bestiality, and lolly.
3 of which are, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Gargura or something like that. And yeah, that's definitely, I guess you could say her character is a prominent target, you could say, of, well, the kind of treatment you see in those pictures.
Now, over the course of my video here, I might be including clips here and there of Nicandros showing some of the other YouTube videos. And if I do choose to include them, you're going to hear the type of content that they were covering in these YouTube videos. And it might make you wonder, same as me or just about anyone that's seeing this, how the fuck was this showing up and okay on YouTube? Like, how did this not get blown off?
Yeah, why was this allowed, basically?
Immediately when he started rising in popularity. The short answer,
because the rules for big YouTubers and small YouTubers are vastly different, Smile.
answer is I have no fucking clue. It's mind-blowing that Moist Critical as well, who was also very popular at the time still, and all these other big names are covering this stuff and it's getting millions of views, and for some reason nothing is being done about it. Like, you don't have to think very hard to go, okay, we're looking at
because it's getting millions of views
content on YouTube. There's always going to be the risk of kids watching it, so you usually want to veer away from that stuff. There's a good reason why it's in policy to, you know, you don't really get to talk about this kind of shit. Furthermore, he's covering lolly, which in my opinion and most others is much worse. I just genuinely don't know. I don't know why nothing was done at this time, or that maybe it wasn't being monitored, or people just kind of accepted it as being okay. Admittedly, I wasn't on that side of the internet. Usually I'm not. I guess I'm a bit more of like a prudish guy, but I don't enjoy absorbing any of that content in like a public setting.
Sorry, super unrelated to anything. Why does he have a hat? Why does he have a hat that says Milkman? Jeez, my throat today. Yeah, why does he have a hat that says Milkman? Is there a reason for that? Anyways, yeah, no, I just honestly, I think it really is just a matter of YouTube kind of turning a blind eye. I think it might actually just be that simple. Like, there have been a few like relatively big semi-documented instances of big creators making a certain kind of video and it being allowed to stay up, and also for them being allowed to monetize it, whereas smaller creators making the exact same kind of video end up having their shit not only demonetized but often even just like blasted off the face of the platform. So it is just kind of the way of things, unfortunately.
Like, even on the Discord for my YouTube here, it's an 18+.
In other words,
Discord,
I'm surprised, but I'm like
NSFW
not
content.
surprised.
Number one, I just think it's weird to engage with that content publicly. But number two, there's no definite way that I know for a fact that everyone in the Discord is actually 18 and up. So
now that's
why
fair.
would I run the risk of exposing any like kid to that shit? Sorry, it's been a bit of a tangent. I'm very curious to hear what you guys think. If you guys have any theories as to why this kind of went on, but
I said it. I said it already.
Jumping into that, you know, he was also covering lolly stuff. This is his stance on it.
Real quick, just because I did make like a brief little noise, I guess, in response to what he was saying about like, he seems to be taking the stance that like, you know, he said that he thinks it's kind of weird to engage in like basically not safe for work content in like any kind of remote like public manner, like through a channel in a Discord server, for instance. I'm not even in like a ton of Discord servers, but I am in like some servers, and like some of them, particularly the ones for like content creators, they don't have not safe for work channels generally, because kind of like he said, like they could get into trouble if there happen to be minors who partake. But in ones that are just kind of like smaller community whatevers, like for like a, you know, like a guild for a game, for example, those servers are like, it's pretty common to either have not safe for work channels or like to have an art channel that sometimes has things posted in it that like brush up against the lines of like what is safe for work or not safe for work. And I don't know. I'm not saying that I like regularly engage with it, but I also like, I don't think it's really that weird, I guess. I don't know.
Is an interesting take when it comes to this content.
Nux Taku has consistently denied being into it, but he also claims he doesn't believe enjoying it makes you a pedophile.
There are 3 levels here, okay? There's lollies, which I have absolutely nothing against. I don't think anyone has anything against lollies.
To clarify Nux's explanation a bit, by I have always pronounced this lolies. I don't know why everyone in this video seems to be pronouncing it lolly. By lolies, he's referring to characters with a petite body. Yeah, see, this is kind of what I was saying earlier, like towards the beginning, right? There, like, sometimes lolies is not referring to like a child or even a teenager. Sometimes it's legit just referring to a more petite frame or figure.
Okay, like Chibidoki or Megumin from Konosuba or Gura. Nothing has anything against lollies. It's lolly that's the gray zone.
Nux Taku would begin to signal anti-lolicon sentiments in 2022, causing drama between him and Rev Says Desu.
They couldn't believe the guy who has used lolly-related content in his thumbnails, videos, and the same guy who has openly befriended lolicons, followed and praised lolicons on Twitter, could be making such a statement under glaring hypocrisy.
I don't like...
Can we back some of those claims up a little bit? What is this about him befriending and defending loli enjoyers?
Rev, but they are making a sound point. Despite his history, in early 2024, Nux Taku had no problem calling Vosh a pedophile for flashing his lolly horse folder on stream for a couple seconds. One of the more shocking images in Vosh's folder depicted a lolicon VTuber that Nux had reacted to.
What?
16 is high school. No! Meet Natsuri no Matsuri, extremely wholesome VTuber. Also, she likes talking about lollies. Nothing weird here at all. Oh god, this rabbit hole goes deep.
I think at best, that last clip you just saw was an underwhelming reaction to hearing and seeing that someone said, and I quote, "I'm into 10 and 12-year-olds, I agree." Sorry, what?
Yeah, that was...
I don't even
consider my gasps flabbered.
really know what to... I feel insane. I know I'm going out on a limb here. Hot take here. I think if you're attracted to minors, drawn or not, there's something wrong. Now, based on this entire video and what Nick
perhaps
provides, I'm almost more so leaning on this idea that Nux Taku isn't into it himself, but I do think that he saw dollar signs and saw the view count go up when he was covering this stuff.
Not afraid to use it for content.
Weird, but you know, when you start including the name, the title, where to find this stuff, and you know, showing this content on a platform,
you're encouraging it.
A lot of children watching, ends up being a real bad look. And on top of that, you're not condemning this kind of content. You're
if anything, you're condoning it. Yeah,
probably a lot in this video, but again, I am curious to hear what you guys think. Next up, Nick Andrews alleges that Nux Taku,
I think I more or less agree with what he was just saying there. Yeah,
was curating his content as thumbnails, packaging to appeal towards a younger audience, copying the style of thumbnail of Game Theory, PewDiePie, these other really big channels, which in turn would have pulled in younger audiences from those content creators at the time and pushed them towards his content.
He would imitate the thumbnail style of channels like Game Theory, which is very popular with children, and make lots of other content trying to attract MatPat's attention. He eventually succeeded and collaborated with not just MatPat, but also PewDiePie and Markiplier.
Really? Okay, I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that, you know, large content creators are not necessarily great judges of character, and you know, they see an opportunity to collab with another large content creator, and they just want to take the viewership, right?
Except he didn't.
I will say though one thing about the whole like copying the thumbnail style to try to specifically appeal to a younger audience. That might be a bit of a stretch, I think, because I think it's just very common. I mean, I was talking about thumbnails earlier, right? Look at like drama YouTubers. They all started doing like the same sort of style for their video thumbnails, right? There's all like he's done, you know, it's over kind of thing. Like that's very I feel like it's less about trying to, I mean, again, just benefit of the doubt kind of deal. Just looking at things, trying to look at things like more objectively and less accusatory. I don't know if it's necessarily the case that he's trying to appeal to a younger audience, but rather he's just trying to make his thumbnails more appealing in general. He's trying to design his thumbnails in a way that will attract more viewership, period, full stop. You know what I mean?
Not just MatPat, but also PewDiePie and Markiplier. Except he didn't. These are just misleading clickbait thumbnails. However,
I'll remove my foot from my mouth now, having just slandered those three individuals. That explains why I hadn't heard about this, though. That explains why it was news to me, because it was fake.
if you were a fan of one of these massive channels with very young audiences, and you were tricked into clicking on one of these videos, your recommendations would fill up with stuff like this.
Okay. Now that seems a little more intentionally devious, I guess you could say. So the defense that I just tried to offer Nux in this case, well, that just got beat upside the head a little bit, didn't it?
Few watch throughs, I was going to disagree with this point a bit more, because in my head, when you're kind of like, copying the thumbnails of the people around you, given me, for example, shout out more Pegasus, you're doing so because that is what is working in the algorithm. That is what people are interested in clicking on.
I'm gonna just shut up.
The more I realized that MatPat and PewDiePie and Markiplier had successful thumbnails, or let's just talk about game theory in general, they were successful. I was clicking on them, but I was also a kid. Matter of fact, most of my friends enjoying any of the content from these creators that he has brought up, that he was also, pretending to collab with and stuff, I was watching all of them as a kid growing up. So as much as I just want to say, well, he was also copying these things to maybe just be more successful in the algorithm, at the same time, I have that bias of, well, I watched them. That's why I knew that they were successful in the algorithm. Moreover, different thumbnail styles and different, content styles are more successful in different parts of YouTube based on the audience that you're going for. In which case, I think Nicandrous is making a pretty good point here. Now, he makes a lot of good points in this section about how it's appealing to a young audience, but I want to focus on this point that he brings up directly in regard to a TikTok trend with this Animal Crossing thing that was made.
Not TikTok!
His second channel was a reaction to a viral Animal Crossing adult animation with very minimal censorship. There are small blurs around the genital areas, but you could still make out what's going on. What implication? And what's funny about it?
What?
When this animation came out, it became a viral meme, and a bunch of kids on TikTok were, as Nux Taku says, doing the things or doing the dance. In other words, publishing media of themselves for anyone in the world to see, in which they are replicating moves from an adult animation they had been exposed to. Very understandably, some people considered this to be a risk to those children's safety.
This is currently the most concerning trend on TikTok.
Is it really the most concerning trend on TikTok? There's literally a trend right now called devious licks, where people break into schools or are in schools and steal stuff like hand sanitizer and fire alarms and toilet seats. They just rip them off the toilets. That is a trend on TikTok right now. But no, this is the most disturbing trend on TikTok. All right, dude.
Gonna keep it a buck with you. I don't know how you get defensive and push back on someone saying, hey, it's pretty unsettling and probably really bad to have a bunch of children mimicking a prawn dance. I'm struggling to see how you can justify being defensive about that.
Yeah, I could see. Oh God, hold up. I'm gonna
Regularly uploading.
No, let me just go back instead. I don't want whatever that was just on my screen there. I don't want it on my screen any longer than it has to be there. Yeah, no, I could see the underlying argument of being like, oh no, there's worse stuff happening, like trending right now on the platform, and like being like there's this other bad stuff happening. But the way that he went about it, like mocking the person in the TikTok that he was watching, like that whole thing that he was just doing, and I don't know if I would have immediately use the word defensive, but he did seem to get like a little cagey, I guess. That does feel accurate. It did seem like his comments were like almost a little charged, when it's just kind of like, it seems very unnecessary and like misplaced for him to be pushing back on it in the way that he did. Again, I think if you were just making the argument that like, if it was like it's almost the case of like, it's less about what he said and more about how he said it, to an extent, where like, if he had been a bit more calmer and rational about like, oh, you know, like, I see the problems of this. I see if there was a bit more understanding at play, you could say, and he was like, I see why this guy is saying this, but I think these other things are actually worse, and I think he's exaggerating the issue. That would be a lot more understandable. That would be a lot more reasonable. But the way that he responded, it did kind of seem like he was trying to minimize something that like other people did see an issue with, and rather than just trying to say like, there's other problems that maybe we should be talking about, it was more like whataboutism. Like, oh, you think this is bad? Well, what about this other thing? You know what I mean? It's less of a genuine method of trying to talk about problems in general, and it's more just a way of like deflecting and distracting. You see it a lot in politics. Was there something else? Oh, I'm not fucking on TikTok. I have never been a fan of that fucking platform or the kind of content that comes out of it. That's why I wasn't necessarily saying anything like as we were looking at some of the things that we were being shown, was because like, I don't know these trends that they were talking about. Not familiar with them as they were happening with them. This is my first time hearing about them in hindsight. I didn't really know what to say until some more things were said.
I'm struggling to see how you can justify being defensive about that.
He's regularly uploading content sexualizing children's cartoon characters onto a 13+ platform. Characters designed to appeal to children and more likely to be recommended to children. If you look at this video's comments, you see dozens of children explicitly reporting their ages.
Whoa!
These are not adults pretending to be children as a joke. I've seen what's on their channels. They are uploading videos of themselves onto their channels and then leaving public comments under Nux Taku's videos for anyone in the world to see.
Now this, I think, is one of the more concrete things that Nick Andrews points out.
I was definitely thinking as those comments were popping up, I was already thinking like, okay, people lie about their age all the time, like as a joke or for whatever fucking reason. But I was like then going into the similar to how I made the point earlier, like, okay, even assuming that like in the 7 out of 10 loli examples in Nux Taku's video that was discussed prior in the video, even if we assume that like half of those are fine and the other half aren't, that's still a problem. I was going to make a similar kind of argument here where it's like, okay, looking at all of those comments of people saying that they were like very young, if you were reading what was just popping up on the screen, you know, I was going to make the case of like, okay, well, you know, even if we assume like 50 to 70% of those are lies, jokes, whatever, the fact that like even 20, 30, 40% of them are potentially real children that are engaging with this kind of stuff, not great. Yeah, not great. But then we even kind of got that sort of argument was sort of preempted though by what's the name, Nick Andros, by him being like, I went to some of these commenters' profiles and no, they are just as young as they claim to be, and it's very obvious. That's concerning for a number of reasons. Like even just stepping back from the whole context of everything in this video, children who are fucking like, I probably shouldn't use that swear word given again the context of this video. Children who are like 12 and under, in my opinion, probably just shouldn't be on platforms like TikTok in general. Even if they're not being exposed to like not safe for work content, they should really just not be on TikTok in general. But that's a different topic entirely.
Which is that there is a plethora of, in not even having to use the Wayback Machine, but of people saying, hi, I'm a 10-year-old watching this. Hi, I am a literal child watching this content. And in my head, I'm very curious where you go about justifying creating content like this on a platform where there are kids at the bare minimum self-admitting that, hey, they are children watching this content. How do you justify making content when you know that that's happening? And if that isn't the case, if you don't know, how would Nux, as the content creator of this stuff, with what we're seeing comments of children saying that they're seeing this, and he just pulled up a few, how do you not know? It comes off to me as almost an intentional ignorance to this fact, or as an intentional pushing it out of the mind and ignoring that aspect of it to just focus on, well, I'm making this and I'm an adult and I'm only making this with the express intent of only sharing this around with adults. But that still to me is such a hard sell.
Thousands
Yeah, so not only is it just like not only is doing that kind of thing very like disingenuous and like very intellectually dishonest, but it's also the case that like this is coming at it from the perspective of like the kind of like feigned ignorance was sort of the argument that Quintio was making. I think it is oftentimes with content creators, especially big content creators, I think it's more so the case that they just like, they don't really care. They care about their numbers, they care about their metrics, they care about getting their growth. They don't really care if something about what they're doing is actually like negatively impactful to some demographic of people. They just like, they don't care. They don't care. They don't think about it, what have you. I really think that like the idea that like they're aware and they try to justify it to themselves because they don't want to like have to come face to face with the reality of like the ethical quandary of what they're doing. I think that that's like much lower on the totem pole. I think that's like much lower on the lists of like the reality of like grappling of the way that these people do. I think that they just don't care or they don't think about it. I think that those things are far more common than this like mental gymnastics that Quintio is trying to talk about.
of comments like this scattered all over Nux Taku's background.
Oh god, Tectone spotted.
Some old, but many of them are from children who are still minors. If you look at the audience retention graph, you can see that barely anyone is watching this video for Nux Taku's commentary. All of the attention is hyper-focused on the segment where the adult animation is shown. Who do you think is watching it over and over again? Any adult could just go and watch the uncensored animation elsewhere. However, to the children who cannot access adult websites, this is the most easily available and the least censored version of the animation that they can find. Here is a comment from a child saying that they can't access the uncensored animation because of parental controls.
Now, this is speculative work, but
it's pretty decent speculation, I'm not gonna lie.
For Nick Andrus's credit, I can't really think of another reason. Like, yeah, that is the sexual part, and you are left to wonder, well, adults, they know where to find this kind of stuff. In all likelihood, you'd just be jumping on Twitter. Hell, you might not even have to search it, it would fucking come up. But for kids, yeah, if they somehow have access to this kind of content, it's barely blurred, like Nick Andrus is pointing out and whatnot, why wouldn't they just be engaging with these videos and just running it back on these little pieces of clips that they're getting to see through his content? Curious to hear if you guys have any other thoughts or like point of views as to why else that retention graph could be like that. Now to kind of hammer
devil's advocate, yeah, I think that even for adults watching the video, I think that if like I think that it's fair to say that like Nux reacting to the more explicit part is the more like interesting part of the video. And even if like giving a mountain of benefit of the doubt in this one, but even if he has some like legitimately very like clever and insightful commentary to provide beyond the reaction bits afterwards, it is just sort of the way of YouTube that like those parts of the video will not be watched as much as the I guess in this case you could just straight up say the more graphic portion. And so the notion that like, I think that the notion that like, oh, people are like coming back and watching this part over and over and over again, and who do you think it is? Well, I do think that is a decent argument. I also think it is fair to say that just like only looking at the audience of like the people watching this for the first time, there are a lot of people who just want to see like the most interesting part of a video and don't care to watch the entire thing. I've seen this on retention graphics for all sorts of videos, and I've seen it in some of my own videos as well. On this channel isn't obviously doesn't have a ton of viewership to be able to draw like sweeping generalizations or conclusions from, but I've mentioned this before. I've done like some other content creation things, and I have had some videos that got like several thousand views, which isn't a lot, but it's enough to be able to like see some of the sort of metrics that they are talking about here, and know that like, again, that is just oftentimes how viewership works. People want to see specific things in a video that they click on, and if other parts of the video are less interesting, they'll just leave. They just won't watch it.
For this nail on the head, Nicandros also shows a couple of reasons that he believes that Nux fully knew that there were children watching, specifically at the bare minimum 13 and up, and shows multiple different ways how he recognizes this in his own content. First off, he has a disclaimer in these videos at the time saying this video and my entire channel is rated PG-13 and should not be viewed by anyone under the age of 13 without direct parental consent. That doesn't come with the description. I would know he wrote that himself, or someone on his team wrote it if he has a team working with him. For me, that's fucking crazy. Next example, Nux, while...
Let me see. How crazy do I think that is? I don't know. I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense. It's like, it's something that would be like weird to see on like my channel, for instance, but I think when you're making when you're making content that like where the content skews adult, I think that's like kind of fair to want to put a sort of disclaimer like that. I don't think that necessarily is like evidence of him like trying to cover his ass, you know? It could be him trying to, have something to point to be like, oh no, I'm not trying to, encourage or influence a young audience. Like, look at this disclaimer that I have. Like, it could be that, but I don't know. I think that that's sort of like a fair thing to have. Like, video games, shows, movies have disclaimers. If you hop on Twitch, there are like certain categories and certain streamers who like, in order to watch their streams, you need to like click a little thing that says you're an adult, which obviously doesn't prove you're an adult, but that's like a similar form of disclaimer, right? It was my point in bringing that up. So like, I don't know. I don't think it's that weird necessarily.
In a video with
on its
people,
own,
he had asked for, fans to send videos in. He had a child fan that sent in a video of themselves.
Despite requesting NSFW content, the announcement does not list a minimum age. So Nux Taku was giving a financial incentive to minors to find the worst NSFW content they could. He would review these submissions a month later in a video with Oompaville and Iron Mouse.
I've never even pondered the...
Wait, with Iron Mouse?
Minors to find the worst NSFW content they could. He would review these submissions a month later in a video with Oompaville and Iron Mouse.
Wow, that is an old model. I have never seen that. Also, I still don't know who this other guy... I know that Nicandros just said the other guy's name. I don't think I've ever heard of this fucking guy before.
I've never even pondered the thought that we could have Lolly and Guro and Bondage all in one thing. That's amazing.
Oh my god.
Among those submissions was a video that one of Nux Taku's child fans had recorded of themselves.
Oh, what? Bro.
Doing
don't even know what that was.
That was some kid just sent you a video of them shitting and then shooting a dog with a Nerf gun.
It's not CSAM. It's some little boy farting into their phone camera. Then they shoot at their dog with a Nerf gun. There's no nudity, and you can't even see their face. However, they are clearly a child, and based on the...
That's good, but also still a really weird thing to publicize. Like, if you get that submission, you know, you can, in a sense, you can't help getting that kind of submission, but you don't have to fucking show every submission you get, right?
Size of their hand, a very young one at that.
Now, there's going to be a bit more of Nux engaging with content where you would have to just be scratching your head wondering about how you wouldn't stop to think that, hey, maybe this is a child.
Maybe don't show this.
A Reddit post from his subreddit that was completely unmoderated.
Also, point that it doesn't seem like either of them are going to make, that I'm going to make now. I've been playing a fair bit of devil's advocate, trying to like point out like, oh, you know, this is reasonable, this is logical, I could see this angle, all this other thing. I'm going to point out something that I don't think either Quinthio or Nicandros have said, or seems like they're going to say, which is that like him showing that clip of that child, again, even if it wasn't like overtly sexual in nature, that absolutely is something that encourages other children to more heavily engage with you and your content. If he were to do any kind of follow-up video in a similar vein, the fact that he showed that video 100% encourages other kids to be like, oh, I could be in a Nux video, and want to send videos of themselves doing weird shit to try to get some screen time, right? So that is, I really don't like that. I really don't like that one, that thing that we were just showing.
Please forgive me. Stop sending Gentai. Why? I already lost No Nut November. Half of my class saw Aqua's butthole on my screen. To be fair, mad respect for sending Aqua's butthole, and your class should be thankful.
The OP of this post was 12 years old. They are literally talking about a class in that post. There is no reason not to assume they might be a minor. And had Nux Taku checked their profile when the screenshot was taken, he would have seen this.
Okay, let's not be silly. Let's not be silly. I get we're trying to frame things a certain way. Let's not be silly. Plenty of people who are not minors, plenty of people who are of age adults attend classes. You can be a high schooler and be a legal adult. You can be in college. You can be in taking like not trade school, maybe trade school, but like there's like vocation, like there are lots of different kinds of classes that an adult could be in. So let's settle down a little bit with some of these things.
Comment. This child was not a one-time poster. Between October 2019 and August 2020, they made 160 posts to the Reddit.
I guess because it was unmoderated, he might not have seen that comment, although it's still a stretch, and 146 posts from a single 11 to 12-year-old child is horrific. Again, and I'm just going to keep repeating this, I guess, I don't understand how you make content like this and don't expect that this is a possibility that kids are going to engage with the content, and you don't take any steps to prevent this. He made a subreddit dedicated to sharing this kind of content and talking about hentai and shit, and he had it unmoderated. There are kids literally commenting that they are 10, 11, 12 in this Reddit, and nothing's being done. Like, I don't...
On Twitch and Discord, you get banned for that shit these days. You make a joke about being like 12 years old on a platform like Twitch, like in a Twitch chat or in any random Discord, like they have implemented like things that automatically search for certain kinds of declarations like that, and they will permaban your ass for it.
Even know how it doesn't cross your mind. Now, there is so much that I am glossing over that, again, I encourage, if you're thinking, maybe this is a bit shaky, you should go and watch this full video. But I want to show you guys towards the end here.
Maybe if this one gets good views.
Discord, this Patreon only Discord server that was dirt cheap to get into.
I will say, Yeah, I don't think there's much to say other than that Reddit definitely should have been moderated. I think that having a not safe for work Reddit for your community is totally fine. Subreddit for your community, I think that's totally fine. But if there are going to be, you know, numerous instances that people can look back on and use and like find screenshots to include in a video like this, where there are children admitting their children participating in those communities, you need moderation for those communities. Whether you currently have no moderation, which it's being made out to be the case that you had no moderation for these, whether it's no moderation or minimal moderation, if you have this kind of thing happening in your community, you need better moderation. Oh, but people can just lie. Doesn't matter. You need to be doing fucking something, right? Cause yeah, like, and another thing too is like, there's a big difference between like a 10 to 12-year-old and like a 16 to 18-year-old, right? 16 to 17-year-old, right? Like 16 and 17-year-olds are still minors, but I think it's totally reasonable to say that teens of that age are going to like be looking at like porn, hentai, things like that, and like they're going to be finding ways to like view that kind of content. Sure. But a lot of the like screenshots we've been getting shown are like kids who are younger. And that is a big difference, in my opinion, in terms of like the sort of like the level of inappropriateness, I guess you could say, for a variety of like mental, like psychologically, like developmental reasons that I'm not going to attempt to fully get into. But like, I also don't think I need to I don't think I need to do a whole song and dance explaining why that's worse, right?
That was so cheap to get into that a 14-year-old was able to enter it. And this 14-year-old, I wouldn't say sexually, but was absolutely groomed by the adults around them and the other people a part of this Discord. I'm going to show you guys some of those clips leading into, you know, recognizing this person's name is Red. That's how Nick.
Also, yeah, I had a fucking credit card when I was like 13, 14 years old. If I wanted to get into something like this by spending $1, easy peasy.
Nicandros addresses them in these, but I want to show first a clip that Nicandros found in regard to Nux Taku and his stance about, you know, children on Discord, young age, and like content creator Discords, things like that. Just really sets a good stage here.
The biggest shock to me to this day entering the broader commentary sphere was the dangers lurking around every corner in regards to children. Children are not safe on the internet. I only became chronically online after high school, but I couldn't imagine what it would do to me if I was in some YouTuber's Discord server at the age of 12 or 14.
You couldn't imagine. You don't need to. Red joined the server on September 7th. On day 1, they openly declared themselves to be 14 years old. They would later claim to be 15 multiple times, but as they openly stated, they were lying about their age. Red was born in 2004. They had turned 14 soon before they joined the server. The Discord was a pretty small clique, and soon enough, basically everyone on the server knew that Red was underage. Despite this, Nux Taku made the NSFW channel for them a month later, and within a year, they had posted 242 messages on the channel. There's also an instance where another user pinged Red into the NSFW channel. As far as I can tell, this behavior was not punished.
Now, Nicandros had actually reached out to me, and we ended up going through some of these Discord logs where he literally just pulled them up from the server. He didn't have to archive these messages or anything. He could just search them up and find them and show me what he was talking about. If you guys can think back to the Ava Chris Tyson allegations, which Nicandros kind of touches on in this video, when we were dealing with, you know, having to put our brains together and look at, you know, the density of messages and these kids saying what their ages were during the Ava Chris stuff, we were looking at that and going, well, you know, it was close enough to these kids saying, you know, what their ages are and them engaging with this material that Ava Chris Tyson more likely than not must have known. If you compare,
I don't know this Ava Chris Tyson situation that is being talked about. If anybody thinks that's interesting enough for me to look into, I guess drop a video link or title for me to look at.
You know, like the density of messages and these people interacting with like Ava Chris Tyson or Jimmy at the time, it is much worse. It is like magnitudes worse.
Wait, Jimmy, is it a Mr. Beast thing?
At this Nux Taku server.
I'm
It's
unsure.
a much smaller group because you did have to pay, albeit like $1 or $2. It's a much smaller group, and pretty much everyone in that Discord seems to recognize and address Red as a child, making jokes about it, commenting about it, and shortly after they're talking about Red or talking about their age or anything like this, Nux Taku is showing up. Nicandros in his video further shows that they were in Discord calls together. It gets to a point where it is very, very difficult to give Nux benefit of the doubt that he just didn't know what was going on. But even if you were to, further than that, which I would say is the best case scenario, this is one of the most egregious lapses in moderation and you know, using your basic thinking skills that ends up resulting in a child having like truly a traumatic experience by being a part of this Discord in the same way that Nux was just talking about in that earlier clip. And I'm not just saying that. I'm going to show you later on what Nick ends up pointing out after talking with Red. Before I do, I just want to show you a
Oh, we got to talk to this person. Oh boy. Okay. Yeah, I feel like in case you haven't been able to clearly see my face throughout some of this as well, I do also just want to, I guess, say real quick, just vocalize. I don't think I'm gonna make any excuses for this one. Again, I recognize that like I've been it almost unintentionally, just because again I like to try to look at things as like rationally as I can. I like to try to I don't like to go into a situation like having already made up my mind basically. So I've been almost unintentionally doing a lot of devil's advocate and kind of trying to you know, not necessarily spin things, but like unspin things, I suppose, to be like, oh, well, they're, you know, Quinthio and Nicandros are saying this, but if you flip that and frame it slightly different, it's not like as bad sort of thing. All the stuff we were just shown with the Discord, that's just bad. That just seems, from what I was just shown, that just seems bad. I don't think there's any getting around that one. You know, Quinthio has been saying a few times in this video how you know, like after going over certain points, he said a few times, like, if you can think of another explanation, like, feel free to let me know. And I've done that a couple of times. This one, no, this really just, I feel like, should not have happened. I don't know. This just seems like something that should not have been allowed to continue the way that it did. Like, I was in a server, again, like I said earlier, I'm in a few like gaming servers and stuff. There's a smaller server that I'm in. That was only like a couple dozen people. And at one point someone joined, and based on their behavior, they seemed like really young. They seemed really young. And they started making some like similar sorts of like comments as to like some of what you've seen screenshotted throughout this video, where they try to dance around acknowledging their age, but they say things that also, but while at the same time, because they're a kid, they're not necessarily like clever enough to know how to fully do that. And so they do inadvertently end up revealing that like they're a teenager. And they'll try to like, when it's pointed out, they'll try to like cover it up and be like, oh, well, you know, teen could mean this, that, or the other thing. But then also they'll talk about like their high school classes and like, and just like other things that make it very clear that this person is like young. And I messaged a couple of people who were like doing moderation for the, you know, like like not necessarily the server owner, but like one of the people who like did a lot of the oversight for the server. And I was like, so am I the only one who's like uncomfortable by this person being here? And no, I wasn't. But you know, there were other people who like felt basically, who like this like noticeable child's presence made them kind of like hesitant to want to continue like talking and participating in the server. Whereas other people in the server were totally fine to just keep talking to this person and like definitely not to the level of what's being addressed here in this video, but like even make like slightly inappropriate jokes about like not safe for work content, like I think somebody shared a fan art of something, and the kid was like, "Oh, this looks really cool. What's this character from?" And somebody was kind of like, "Haha, I can't tell you that. It's from an Arrows or something like that." And it's just kind of like, why do you think that's an okay way of interfacing with this person? So yeah, that's it. It's so weird. I'm not one of those people who thinks that like adults can never have like real conversations with kids. I think that it's actually important for the socialization of children to be able to talk to adults and be treated like they're real people. But that doesn't mean you talk to them about anything and everything the same way you would an adult. You know what I mean? So yeah, personal anecdote as a bit of an aside here.
Few more examples that Nicandros had brought up, showing these people interacting with this person, knowing their age, but also the type of content that these people were showing this child.
But did Nux Taku know that Red was underage? There is no message of Nux acknowledging Red's age. However, it is extremely unlikely that he didn't know. In this conversation from earlier, where Red says they're lying about their age, Nux Taku shows up soon afterwards. In this conversation, there's some kind of an ERP going on in the general chat, which is interrupted by Red. Red is told not to get involved because they're underage. After Red says the conversation is making them gag, another user jokes, "Oh no, we better stop if we are gagging a minor." Red pinged Nux Taku.
Why do you think that's okay? I feel like that joke is like maybe okay if it's some kind of wordplay involved and the person isn't actually a minor. But when the person's actually a minor, that sort of joke is just concerning, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Soon afterwards, but Nux didn't show up. This is Mintheus Mouselord, or Mitochondria, or Mito. According to Nux Taku, they were the best poster on the NSFW channel. In this conversation about BDSM, we can see Red asking Mito to send their presentation on sex toys to other users. Note, I just made the presentation.
Hold up, what?
Send their presentation on sex toys to.
Which, if you look at that comment, it seems to be making it very clear that they've already seen this presentation. You know, the kid has.
Other users.
Yeah, that's fine.
I just made the presentation because Red was clueless. After Bex mentions having a high tolerance to weirdness, Nux shows up.
Yeah, I wonder why the kid wouldn't know much about sex toys. Weird.
Up to say, "Proud fanbase." Gremmen asks Mito to send the presentation to Nux. I think that Red already sent it to him. No, I told ya. Never sent it, but I can now. What are we sending me? A sex toy presentation. Why? Lol. We needed to explain sex toys to Red. Nah, it's fine if it's not sent to Nux. Already did, Mito. I'm not doing honest descriptions on all Mito's sex toys. A few minutes later at 2:16, Nux says, "Very cool, Mito, very cool." Nux Taku has now received a direct message from a minor on his server, containing a link to a sex toy presentation that was made for them. What adult is clueless about sex toys? To believe that Nux Taku didn't know Red's age, you'd have to believe he missed all of the instances. That was.
What was that comment?
From a minor on his server, containing a link to a sex toy presentation that was made for them. What adult is clueless about sex toys?
Okay, this is another one where I feel like we're maybe being a little silly. There are a lot of adults that are pretty clueless about sex toys. There are a lot of adults that are pretty clueless about sex toys. Like, let's be for real. And I don't know, maybe It's not that crazy. It's really not. I've known a fair few degenerates in my time, but I've also known some people who were absolutely clueless because they were just that vanilla, and then they just like never went out of their way to seek out any of like this sort of information. I really don't think it's that crazy.
To believe that Nux Taku didn't know Red's age, you'd have to believe he missed all of the instances when their age was mentioned. You'd have to believe no one told him Red was a minor in chats, VCs, or DMs, and that Nux didn't realize it from their voice when talking to them in VCs.
Now the second half,
I do still agree with that though. Despite what I just said about the whole thing about sex toys, I do still agree that like there is seemingly, from what we're being shown here, there's seemingly still plenty of instances where like it seems like there were still plenty of informational cues that should have made it very plainly clear to Nux that this person was a child. Also, I definitely think I've like reacted to it when it was mentioned earlier, but I definitely didn't outright comment on it. The fact that he was in call, does anybody else feel like it's weirder to be in call with a kid in this sort of situation as opposed to just talking in like the group chat? Like, not that talking with them in the group chat is good, again, in this sort of situation, but does anybody else feel like going into voice is like another level that makes it like even more inappropriate, like even weirder? Because I certainly do.
Half of this huge part towards the end here is him showing how Alan is very much connected to Nux Taku, showing up in podcasts with the guy, as well as him repeatedly engaging with Red and showing him content that is absolutely horrific for a child and knowing he is a child. I don't think I need to show all of it necessarily. Highly again recommend you check out Nicandrus's full video, but I went ahead and I spent $1 on Nux Taku's Patreon. Now I just did this a moment ago and I ended up screenshotting it. Turns out when you cancel a membership on Patreon, it doesn't let you like keep the perks that you had when you bought the membership. When I tried to connect over to the Discord, this is what would happen to my Discord. You find yourself in a strange place. You don't have access to any text channels, or there are none in the server. And there wasn't any new servers showing up in my server list on the left-hand side. So at the bare minimum, false advertising. I did not get Discord access for $1, but that is the Discord access that anybody else was allowed to for just spending $1. An NSFW channel, as well as a bunch of people being super cool with the fact that you're under the age of 18. And I reached out to Nicandrus because he was in that Discord server, and I found out that it appears that Nux has just been disabling new people from joining the server, but apparently
I wonder why.
Up and existent. But now the last bit of this video, Nux kind of addressed the release of this video, and he had some interesting things to say about it. First, I want to show you this clip, but then
here we go
jump to the video that he kind of talks about Nicandrus's video in.
People are accusing you of being a pedophile because of a Discord. Oh yeah, we'll talk about that a bit today. I'm not gonna lie. I don't want to be rude. You know what? We'll save it for when I talk about it. It might have been one of the most disingenuous, slanderous campaigns ever, but we'll talk about it a bit. It's unbelievable, to be honest. It really is. It's like, oh, a guy got groomed in a Discord, which is fucking awful. Don't get me wrong, and I'm really sorry if I contributed to that at all. It's really fucking awful. But I really didn't contribute to that much at all, to be honest. Like, if we were being honest.
So sorry, just the tail end of that. I didn't contribute to it much at all. If we're being honest, I didn't contribute to it. If we're being honest, I don't know what that means. But also at the beginning, he said that people were calling him a pedo, and that is true. There were people that had seen.
I love, obviously I'm being facetious. I love how common fake apologies are these days. Like, I know at the beginning of the video, I talked about Nux doing fake apology videos. So this behavior is like not surprising at all, but you know what I mean when I talk about like people giving fake apologies, like the whole like, oh, I'm sorry you feel that way kind of thing. Like the, oh, I'm sorry you think that kind of thing, where people act, where they say the words I'm sorry, but the words that surround it, the phrasing and framing that surrounds the apology makes it clear that like they're not actually taking any shred of accountability for their actions, and they're, if anything, they're like putting it more on you as being like, you know, basically often, you know, in a lot of cases being like, I'm sorry you feel like you deserve an apology almost. And that's definitely how that felt, how what Nux said, how that came across.
Clips of Nicandros's video that were kind of talking about it, and they were saying that Nux was a pedo. But interestingly enough, you might have noticed, even in all the clips that I showed you from Nicandros's video, he didn't once, not a single time, make that allegation, because he isn't making that allegation, and Nux really thinks that he is. You're going to notice that Nux is painting this video in a very different light than what it truly is. And I think this is in an effort to the people, his fans, that aren't going to watch it, or a lot of people that aren't going to sit down and watch the entire thing. He is going to try to manipulate what is going on, what the public thinks about this video, or more specifically, what the public believes this video to be. It is in
that
my
tracks.
humble opinion, after truly seeing this video multiple times, that Nicandros's point is that Nux made content that catered and appealed to a younger audience, a minor audience. He shows supporting evidence to these claims, and he shows that at the bare minimum, Nux has engaged in such a gross negligence that it is very difficult to even agree with it just simply being gross negligence. And it really veers into, there are lots and lots and lots of minors that have ended up searching and finding this sexual content because of Nux's content, and he just doesn't care. Now that's just a clip, but I want to give you guys a bit more information, a bit more to what Nux was saying about Nicandros's video. To start things off, he put it on a video on his second channel here called It Backfired. He fucking found out, and it's at the tail end of this near 40-minute video with a thumbnail in regard to his son. Almost seems like he's just kind of like hiding it in the background here. But let's see some of what he has to say about this video. Mild correction, he starts talking about it around 24 minutes.
Because I quite literally have evolved, I've grown. I'm pretty much anti-porn in general now. My entire stance on all that changed years ago. However, I never endorsed any of the weird shit that I would comment on. I would make fun of it, all right? It was never an endorsement at all. And these people are all liars and disingenuous.
Now, really quick, I just want to address that point that
These people are all liars and disingenuous. Oh, that just... Oh. Something else that I love about content creators. I think there's something I said in the Pirate Software video. All the fucking people who love to play the victim. Like, you're not a fucking victim. Get over yourself. Grow up.
he never endorsed it. My brother in Christ, you literally went out of your way to
direct people to how to find it.
You were going out of your way to include the name and information and how to access the majority of the content that you were covering in your videos. You don't have to just full chest say, I'm into this shit for that to count as endorsing this content for your viewers. Maybe
another thing that I can't stand about the way that people sometimes choose to communicate, and something else that's also quite common in politics, is when people will they'll say and do certain things that very clearly evidence like support for a certain thing or belief of a certain thing, but then they'll be like, oh no, I never technically said, I never specifically said XYZ, and so you're wrong for saying that I support or think or believe these things because I never exactly said those specific words. You know what I mean? Whereas anybody with an ounce of critical thinking can, that is familiar with the idea that like, it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's a fucking duck, right? So this seems, again, seems very similar to the kind of thing that we're doing, or at least the kind of point that Quinthio is trying to make here, where it's like, you might not have said you're into this sort of thing or like promoting this certain thing, but you did all of these other things that seem to suggest that you definitely are doing or believe or feeling, agreeing with, supporting these things that you're claiming otherwise do, I definitely didn't phrase that as well as I could have, but the point should still carry across.
He's going at the angle of like, I'm not endorsing it, being like, I don't think that this stuff is okay. But when you're giving your entire audience access to the material, you're really starting to stretch what you're meaning by endorse here.
The new angle that people are taking is that I was grooming people in a Discord. A lie. I've never groomed anyone ever, and they've never had any evidence of me grooming anyone ever. All right, so it's a lot of implications that get thrown out.
Now you might have trouble believing believing this, but Nicandros actually also doesn't accuse Nux of being a groomer ever. As a matter of fact, at this specific part during the video, Nicandros actually defends Nux from a separate grooming allegation of that individual Alan that I was talking about. So actually, Nicandros literally does the opposite of what Nux is claiming he's doing in this video, which is kind of interesting. Nux is now going to play a clip that he thinks is the most egregious, or he describes himself as like the biggest clip that he had seen going around about this video.
The NSFW channel wasn't there from the start. We can trace its creation to this exchange from October 15th, 2018, where we can see this user who from
2018, let's put it in perspective, 8 years ago.
now on will be called Red, repeatedly asking
Okay.
Nux to create it. If we look at the time and date of these messages, the
So, for the record, this Discord server was made in 2018. It was a Patreon only Discord server. All right, it was not a public Discord server. It was Patreon only. All right, anyway, for donors.
That is a good point. Patreon only, and it only cost $1 to get into it. Only a single $1, which is a pretty low bar of entry.
In response to this, Red raised their Patreon pledge, and Nux gave them a thumbs up.
All right.
For a brief moment, let me take you to August of 20.
This is the guy that made the video. If you want to watch the full video, you should go watch it, by the way, if you want. If you want to watch an hour and a half of this guy calling me a pedophile, with zero evidence that I'm a pedophile, you can watch this video. That would be great. Go do that. All right, I'm not trying to hide that.
Again, another interesting fact, Nicandros never, and I mean literally never in that video, calls him a pedo. So again, just not true. And this is how he's portraying the video to his fan base. He's like, yeah, for sure, go and check it out, although it's all of these things that it literally isn't.
I will not be spending 4 hours reacting to an hour and a half long video calling me a pedophile again and again and again for things I've already addressed.
He's never once ever addressed any of this information because none of it had come out yet.
And he was
Yeah, this all seems like a lot of fucking puffery. This seems like a lot of just like, you know, I'm saying this, you should believe it because I'm saying it, but I'm not going to actually back up what I'm saying from Nux.
So to be clear, this is also incorrect. This is not when I was being pressed for my past content. This was literally a video that I made talking about my 10 years on YouTube because it was like my 10-year YouTube anniversary. All right, this was not like a response to drama video, as far as I remember. Maybe I'm mistaken and I'm thinking of the wrong video, but that's what I thought.
pushed into making a response.
So, as you could see, I addressed many times that I regretted the fact that I would make lewd content and shit back in the day. To be honest, I've mentioned that multiple times, literally called it out in the past. But anywho, moving on. And this video was it was like a 10-year anniversary. This was not like some apology, whatever.
Red joined the server on September 7th. On day one, they openly declared themselves to be 14 years old.
I didn't know about this.
They would later claim to be 15 multiple times, but as they
I didn't know about this.
openly stated, they were lying about their age. Red was
Oh, so they were lying about their age.
You're right, they were lying about their age, and the point of that is, as you can see here, until I tell you my actual age, I'm just gonna say I'm 15, even though earlier they said that they were 14. That's them lying about their age. They were lying about it being a year older, and this is them lying saying they're 15. I think he knows this, and I think that's why he just kind of like grazes past this.
Look, man, I don't know how a minor even got into this Discord server because, as I'm sure he mentioned this in the longer video, I'm not trying to say that he tried to slander me on purpose over here, but this was a Patreon server. For those of you that are unaware, Patreon servers are inherently 18 plus because if you want to become a patron, if you want to join a creator's membership as a patron or provide membership as a creator, you must be at least 18 years old or have permission from a parent or guardian. All right, quite literally, that obviously didn't happen.
It's actually funny how many parallels I'm seeing between the arguments that Nux is making and things that I was addressing and like calling Pirate out for in the video that I just watched about that. Because this is another thing, I think this was something that came up towards the end of the Pirate Software reaction that I did, where yeah, it was about his hype train. The whole thing with the hype train that he scammed out of his viewers, where like he actually had like his head mod like using alt accounts to like keep the hype train going, and his rebuttal to that was about how like there's nothing against TOS that says that like you can't do blah 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 blah, and like I never did X, Y, and Z, and so you people are all fucking stupid. And this is like the same thing where it's like, well, technically, according to the rules, I didn't do anything wrong. And it's like, if your moral code is lockstep and barrel, 1-to-1 with any set of laws or TOS or rules, then your moral code sucks ass. Because there are tons of things that are technically legal, that are technically within the bounds of whatever set of rules, that are, to any reasonable person with any semblance of goodwill in them, immoral and unethical. So the fact that he's going to Patreon's terms of service as his fucking one of his first lines of defense, in my opinion, not really a good look. I don't know.
This was
That's just
inherently an 18 plus Discord server. So if someone lied or stole their mom's credit card, or their mom let their kid join a Discord server from a guy that was making more, adult focused content on my YouTube channel, that is the parents' fault.
So I don't think anyone's pushing back on, this kid found their way onto this server and that's not okay. I think people have an issue with the fact that they were talking about their age, and the fact that they were so young was so talked about on this Discord. Well, if everyone knew that everyone was supposed to be 18 up at this time, how come nobody did anything about it? And how come somehow in this small little, Patreon group, he's talking about, it was Patreon only, so it must have been, smaller and whatnot.
They are trying to, they being, in this case, Quinthio and, actually, I don't know how many of the Nick Andros clips necessarily tried to emphasize this, or if this is more so a thing that was coming from arguments that Quinthio was making. But there definitely has been an attempt at emphasizing the fact that, like, this was like a small, like, almost like a tight-knit group, like a smaller community. I am curious what the, like, actual size, like, of the Discord server was at this point in time, like how many members there were and how many people were like actively talking. Like, were there 300 people and 30 of them were actively participating like on a almost daily basis, or were there like 2,000 people with like 100 people that were like actively talking on it, like. And like, how many different channels were there? Like, were these sorts of conversations with the kid? Like, was this something that was taking place in like only a specific part of the server, or was it like pervasive throughout like whatever different channels were present at the time? So that's something that I would like to know more about, but I feel like it's probably impossible to know that, because the reason we have a lot of these clips or these screenshots rather of different things that were said were because Nicandros paid to get access to the Patreon, right? And none of these messages were like deleted or archived, so he was able to just kind of like search things up and go back and like back read these things. But the other information that I just talked about, that's something that you wouldn't know unless you had screenshots from that time, and again, this was several years ago. So that is something that I would like to know, but unfortunately I don't think there is a way to know it.
Not even Nux saw that Red was on this server. Not even Nux saw that Red was talking multiple times about the fact that they were so young. I don't think.
Also, yeah, I definitely don't agree. I don't believe Nux rather when he's like, I didn't know about this. I didn't know about this. I didn't know. Definitely was unaware. This is the first time I'm hearing it. Like, just again, a lot of the way that he's been. We haven't seen like a ton of clips of like his response, but from what I've seen, I don't think it's been a particularly good defense from him.
I think you can really hide behind blaming the parents.
Very
matter of fact, I guess we should be asking the question too, how come nobody else on the Discord, we have to presume, shared with Nux the fact that there was this fucking child on the server?
I mentioned, right, in my little personal anecdote earlier, like when I found out about the minor in that one server that I was in, I was made kind of uncomfortable at it, and I went to like one of the people who were in charge of the server and was like, "Hey, anybody else feel like this is a problem?" And yeah, so I feel like it is reasonable to assume that like somebody, even if some of these weirdos were entirely okay with engaging with a minor in this way, somebody, I have to assume somebody, at least one person, would have seen this and messaged Nux being like, hey, should we do something about this? So again, even though we don't have like, you know, oh, this person, we know, like, we have this insider who told us like they DM Nux, like, even though we don't have that like damning piece of like evidence, so to speak, between all the other circumstantial evidence and my personal experience correlating how like likely I feel like this should be, it does, like, I just think the claim that he had no idea this was happening just doesn't hold water. And what's more, even if you're going to try to take what he says at face value, and when he's like, you know, saying like, oh, you know, if somebody was, if I had any hand in like contributing to somebody being groomed in this way, then that's horrible, and I'm sorry about that. Again, with the way he apologized, that's why I'm putting the air quotes. But I feel like even if you're trying to, even if you want to believe him, even if you are trying to take what he says at face value, I feel like I feel like it all kind of like, it's built on the premise that he didn't know, right? If you're assuming that Nux in all this is like if you assume that he is not acting in bad faith in the way that he is talking about the situation, in the way that he's defending himself, and the way that he's recounting events and all these different things, if you're assuming that he's not acting in bad faith and you're trying to take things at face value, then it all kind of stems from the premise that he didn't know about this specific person being underage, right? Because that's like the big talking point is about this one person, right? There's all these other things with like his YouTube videos and like the way that he's like arguably catering his content to a certain kind of audience and all, but the big, like the egregious thing is what happened to this one person, right? That's kind of like where the like this one person, Red, as they've been calling him so far in this video, is like the kind of embodiment, right? Is the kind of like the symbol of like all of these bad things, like the culmination of all of these bad things, and like here's proof of why it's true. Basically, it's like, because you can try to write off like, oh, he's not actually doing this, it's not actually having like these kind, like what he's doing isn't actually having these kinds of negative effects, right? But this person, Red, is kind of like the example that we can point to and be like, actually, it did have these negative effects. Here's the proof. It happened to this person. Here's what happened to this person. And it's like, again, it's the kind of like almost like the end point of the assumptions and like the sort of like the propositions of like what could happen. Here's the example of like what did happen. And so yeah, so the Nux's argument has to be based in the fact that he didn't know about this, that he didn't know that this kid was in his server and participating in these kinds of conversations, right? That if you were to believe him, that is the core thing you have to agree with him on. And I just feel like from what I have seen, there's no reasonable way to realistically actually agree, like believe him on that front. So, and once you can't believe the baseline of somebody's argument, everything else kind of falls apart, right? It becomes much harder to believe anything he says about like Nicandros's video being like slanderous and whatever else. It becomes much harder to believe that he didn't know XYZ or that he doesn't support or agree with X. It becomes much harder to try to meet him where he's at with any of these other things if you've gotten to the point where you can't believe in, again, that baseline assumption of his basically if you cannot believe in the assumption, if you've gotten to the point where you cannot, where the assumption of innocence for Nux has fallen through for you.
Did nobody see?
Hope that all made sense.
Or is Nux potentially lying about nobody bringing this up? I don't know, but are we just
Probably
also
both.
assuming that everyone here that was a part of this page trend actively engaging with Red, with them talking about their age, with them engaging and saying, hey, don't be a part of this because you're underage, when they're literally erotic role playing in the general chat of this server? What are we doing? This comes off very clearly as a very panicked Nux. He really seems to be freaking out here, and he is deflecting and
That too. I will say, like, I haven't like consumed any content from Nux in like recent years. Not only just like in recent years in real time, but also like, again, when I did watch his videos, it was several years ago. So like the videos that I saw, like he could the way that he presents himself in videos could be like drastically different now than it was back then. So I don't feel like I know how he presents himself well enough to say with certainty that the way he's acting in that video seems like off. But I did kind of feel like, just for whatever it's worth, I do kind of agree with the assessment from Quinthio here that the way Nux seemed to be defending himself in those clips that we saw did seem a little frazzled. He did seem to be like, he did seem to be like trying really hard to like make certain points and like to get people to believe certain things, which to an extent is understandable. You don't want people thinking you're a pedophile. But it did seem like it did seem like very kind of like nervous and like there was almost a bit of desperation to it, I guess is a good way to classify it.
Ways that are only going to be working for his core audience that is not going to focus on the details of this. I am genuinely really disturbed by his response here. I think that maybe my bias has gotten into my head with what I've seen so far, but it is really hard for me to find Nux to be anything other than disingenuous in his response to Nick Andros here.
Yes.
Moreover, just his response to these claims.
Yes, I think it is. I think that both things can be true. I think it can be entirely the case that Quinthio does have bias in the way that he's choosing to, in the way that, not even necessarily choosing, but just in the way that he's processing the situation. But I also think that for the kind of whole aforementioned argument that I was making, or the prior argument that I was making about like how it becomes harder to like believe anything that Nux says about all these other things when you can't believe the baseline argument of like, oh, I didn't know that this person was a kid. So I think that both things can be true.
Redirecting guilt to other parties, like the parents of this individual,
projecting,
as opposed to taking
classic,
any sort of accountability. And every time he almost takes it and he's like, yeah, you know,
deflection,
these
projection,
kinds of things are bad,
all those.
I'm sorry if it happened, when it's so very clear that it happened. And I think he's going out of his way to intentionally act like he's not for sure so that he can still claim this absolute ignorance and viciously gross negligence. Again, very curious to hear what you guys think.
And even more importantly, this also had an age verification. This also had an age verification. You needed to click that you were 18 plus to join this channel in the server.
Well, when an individual is in your server self-admitting over and over and over again to the fact that they're underage over and over and over again, it's really hard to use the excuse of they clicked the button that said I'm 18 and up. For instance,
yes.
I only advertise my Discord server as being 18 and up. We don't have NSFW content, like I said, but I just don't want kids running amok. We have a role in the Discord that you can assign yourself that is below 18. If we find anyone assigning themselves with that role, they get banned from the server because believe it or not, they can end up hopping in. They can end up clicking on the link that I've said, hey, you have to be 18 up to join this. And they can deceive our Discord and try to get in regardless, which is why you moderate it, why you don't just post this kind of content on it, because you run this risk, especially when you have as large of an audience as someone like Nux does. So again, this just comes off as just bullshit excuses. Now, after this point, he kind of repeats himself a little bit.
Well, also, that's similar to the whole like the technicality thing that I was talking about earlier with like, you know, relying on like, oh, well, because of the rules kind of thing. I think in a somewhat similar vein, the notion that like, oh, they click the button, it's like like, oh yeah, because everybody reads the terms and services of like everything that they, you know, when you have those like dozens of pages of terms of service before when you sign up to use like any kind of like software or whatever. Everybody reads those before clicking I agree, right? So
and then shows like
same shit.
PewDiePie was covering this also terrible anime thing that depicted adults engaging with children in a bad way, a graping way, and said that it was a trend at the time. And he is right. I mean, interacting with Shadman on Twitter was also relevant at the time.
Shadman, holy. Oh my, that is some internet lore if ever I've heard it. Holy. Oh, I wonder whatever fucking happened to that guy. I wonder if there's some interesting videos on Shadman that I could watch for the channel. That could be fun. In a but fun.
And it was a trendy, popular thing. Now, I will say across the board, yeah, probably wasn't a good idea to make content like that, especially on a platform like YouTube. PewDiePie's video about this was 10 years ago. And yes, he did react to this one, but it was a literal one and done, which again, still not great. Whereas Nux Taku was doing this content literally up into 2022. A little over 4 years of making content like this.
Oh, hold up. I kind of wish that Quinthio would show a screenshot of like the thumbnail and title of this video that's supposedly from 2022, because we just heard from Nux that he's like super anti-porn and hentai and all that stuff these days, and like hates that he used to, find a way to monetize all this weird shit. So I feel like hearing that sort of argument, my assumption is that this was like 5+ years ago, not like we're in 2026 now, right? I'm not crazy. We're in 2026 now. This is 2022, so like 3 or 4 years ago. That feels like we're maybe stretching credulity a little bit with like this almost like, oh, I'm different now kind of thing. You know what I mean? Which again, just another knock against the way that he's trying to present himself as he frames and spins things for his own purposes, right?
Really know if you can compare those two things to each other, and I don't really know if you can justify, well, everyone reacted to this one particular egregious one when you've
there's only a minute left in this video. Weren't we going to have a moment, have a bit where Nicandros talked to Red? Is that not going to be included here?
Monkeys doing this to children. And when you're also covering them in the amount that you were, you had a series dedicated to doing this. Just comes off as like, well, other people were doing it, so it was cool, but they weren't really doing what you were doing. And I think as much as you can regret, doing this kind of stuff or feel bad or, yeah, I'm not proud of what I was doing in the past, I don't know if that is necessarily just the thing that absolves you of something like this, especially when a lot of this information, like in regard to
very fair,
hasn't been out yet. I don't think you get to walk away from all this new information by saying, well, I've addressed, I regret that time in my life. I don't think that's the be all end all response to this kind of thing. And
Agree.
I'm curious to hear again what you guys think about that. But as
of
right now, that is
I think I agree with that.
I believe that Nux has really given it. As of right now, Nicandros actually mentioned Nux's response and has talked about it. Apparently his video is supposed to be 25 minutes longer, but he cut off a good chunk of it. So he will be making a part 2 talking about all of this other information and kind of responding.
Hold up. I actually want to look at here's a funny story. My video was supposed to be 25 minutes longer, but I cut that stuff off to release the video near Nux's 30th birthday. I think that's very relevant. Because this means that when he was doing his earlier YouTube stuff, 8 to 10 years ago, he's in his early 20s. Understandable that he might be a little bit of a shithead. But, and again, 2018, again, 7-8 years ago, depending on when in the year and you want to whatever. But when we're talking about things as recently as again, like 2022, things that are only like, 4 or 5 years ago, sort of thing. I think it's and also the fact that like, and also again the way that he's responded in the past like couple weeks as a 29-year-old, maybe 30-year-old, I don't know exactly when his birthday was, but as a effectively 30-year-old man, like that is very different than if you were to pull back the age on all of these events by like 3, 4, 5 years. You know what I mean? There is a certain level of like maturity that you would hope would come with this sort of ages that we're talking about, in my opinion. But at the same time, I'm also someone who I think that the notion that the older you are, the more mature you get is kind of bullshit. I think that a lot of people are just a lot more immature than people like to acknowledge and admit to, regardless of how old they are. But I do think, even with that being said, I think it's easier to excuse certain things when people are in their late teens, early 20s, maybe even mid 20s. But some of these things aren't necessarily from when Nux was in those times in his life. Some of those things are more mid to late 20s. Again, especially in the case of like his response recently. And I think that is I think that's very telling and kind of important to recognize personally.
To Nux's response. But with all that being said, that brings this video to a close. If you enjoyed it,
actually, let me read the rest of that. 25 minutes is what part 2 would be, debunking the lies he has told to justify his own content or obfuscate its nature. You can't spend 70% of your response to my video talking about why Hassan Piker is bad.
Nux's response. But with all that being said, that brings this video to a close. If you enjoyed it, please.
I had a similar sort of thought earlier, but I just didn't want to mention it. But
be sure to leave it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you're new here, perchance giving this video a hype. And I will catch you guys later.
What the fuck is hype? The fuck was that? Anyways, what the fuck is hype? That's something I put that I've added that to the description of my videos to like, comment, survive, all that, and share, and like I included hype in there, and there's like I put a little note in my video description too, like I don't know what this is, but I keep hearing other creators say to do it on videos. What happened to the I thought we were going to include something with Nicandros talking to Red. I don't know if that's something that was referenced as being like, maybe that's something that's in Nicandros' full video. Maybe that's something that's coming later in a second part. But I guess I misunderstood. I thought that was something we were going to be addressing in this video and covering in this video, but I guess not. Which may be for the best, since this is already a 40-minute video and my recording is, a little bit longer than 40 minutes. Although I don't think I necessarily have much to belabor here at the end after having finished it. Yeah, I think that this is not conclusive evidence that Nux is a pedophile. I think that is something that I think it's still fair to say that. However, I do think that Nux kind of sucks, and I think, I did admittedly kind of come into the video more or less thinking that because of my prior experience with his content and the way that he runs his channels. Actually, at that point in time that I watched his videos, it was probably just channel singular. But you know what I mean. Given the exposure that I'd previously had to Nux, I didn't come into this with a favorable opinion of him. So you could argue that like I was ready to paint him as a bad guy and like see him as a villain. But I think if you actually paid attention to the various things that I said in this video, it's very clear to you, it should be very clear to you that like I wasn't actually trying to do that. I don't want to see the worst in people. they just often show me it. I do actually want to see people being good. I do actually want to see the bright side of things. Generally speaking, I think it's just often very hard with the way that people are and the way the world is these days, I think. And so I don't think that you should come away from this thinking, oh, that fucking Nux guy he likes kids. But I do think that you should come away from this being, at the very least, a little skeptical of Nux's character for a variety of reasons that I'm not going to even attempt to rehash right now, because this video is almost 2 hours and I don't want to unintentionally leave anything off and make it seem as though like point X is less important than point Y, you know what I mean? But also to kind of like wrap things around to the beginning of this video and kind of address something that I said again at the beginning, and just sort of like as a way to come full circle with things. Do I think that he's done? Do I think that Nux is going to be canceled over this? No. I think that you might see a small, possibly noticeable dent in his like subscribers and viewership on things, but I would be frankly quite surprised if this damages his reputation in any significant manner. If this damages his size and growth and content in any significant manner. I think that, maybe I shouldn't even say I think, honestly. I hope that going forward, certain other content creators, I hope that this notion that, like, even though Nick Andros in particular didn't call Nux pedophile, and I'm not saying that I think Nux is, I'm not committing to the idea that I think Nux is pedophile, or even necessarily that like he participated directly in the grooming of Red, or anybody else for that matter. I still kind of hope that the idea that he might have, or that he might be, as the case may be, depending, I still hope that that becomes widely circulated enough that other content creators maybe think twice about collaborating with him. Because collaborating between content creators is, frankly speaking, an easy way to grow your audience. It is a very easy way to grow your audience. It's why I don't want to get too much into talking about other content creators and like bashing on people for certain practices in the industry, in the field. But I will just, I don't want to distract from the overall topic at hand. So I will just say that collaborating is often a very easy way to grow your audience. And so a lot of content creators don't really have issues with doing it. They are much happier to take up a collaboration than to refuse one. Which is why you see some creators who collaborate with a lot of other creators, because they just know that it's an easy way to get their content out there. It's a good way to grow their audience, to get more eyes on their videos and their streams and whatever else, right? But I hope that people basically I basically hope that people start seeing Nux as a bit more of a brand risk. And if the opportunity arises for them to collab with him, they think twice about it. And they're like, oh, do I really want people like coming to my chat, coming to my comment section saying, oh my God, you collabed with Nux, like you believe such and such and such, you are such and such and such. Like, people try to often avoid controversial figures unless they are themselves a controversial figure. And so that's kind of why I was so surprised. I don't know what year it was, but that's why I was so surprised when we saw that clip earlier in the video of Iron Mouse collabing with Nux, because, you know, she's one of the golden children of Twitch, right? And so to see her engaging with such a controversial figure as Nux, again, that just kind of goes to show that like he definitely isn't viewed as being as despised as some people might lead you to believe. And certain accusations or allegations or whatever don't always necessarily lead to people caring enough to be like, oh, well, you know, that to want to like actually avoid association with a person. Again, this was from years ago. I don't know how many years ago, but this was clearly from years ago based on the model. So obviously the information that was in this video is obviously not, I'm not saying that like Iron Mouse knew all these things before collabing with him all that time ago. Obviously that's not what I'm saying, but what I am saying is that like, if Iron Mouse or whoever the hell else, this isn't about Iron Mouse in particular, she's just an example because she was in this video. I do hope that if given the opportunity to collab with Nux in the future, these other creators, again, just kind of choose not to, or at the very least, consider not doing so. Because if by choosing to collab with Nux, sure, you might grow your own audience, but you also help grow his audience. And that is something that when you have someone who, again, he's not saying he's confirmed to be XYZ or confirmed to have done XYZ, but when you have somebody who is at the very least questionable in this way, in this sort of serious way, you need to be I would like, in my ideal world, you can say need, but realistically, it's not need. You would hope that these creators who have big audiences would be more responsible with who they choose to share their audiences with. Because wouldn't it suck to find out that one of your loyal viewers, one of your, like someone who's supported you for years, ended up having something bad happening to them because they started to get involved with a community they were introduced to through one of your collabs. With that, I think let's go ahead and end this video off. I think this might be my longest video to date. Dear God, I am such a fucking yapper. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that good shit. And until I see you in the next one, take care. Bye.